Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone from around the world. We have an extra special Workspot webinar today as we are joined with our partner IGEL, and that is Jamie Hallscott. Hey, Jamie, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Brad. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, good. Well, we got a great combined message today. Now, I am Brad Peterson, field CTO at Workspot. I've been here for 8 years, and boy, I was at Citrix for 10 years, so kind of familiar with this space as Jamie is as well. And yeah, we're going to talk to you guys about a combined notion of Workspot and IGEL working together, better together. Okay, so let's take a look at the agenda for today. And by the way, it's a 30-minute webinar, so we're really going to jump into a lot of content and keep rolling all the way through. But we want to make sure you ask questions along the way. If we're on a topic and you have a question about that, you put it in and I'll see it on the screen. We will handle it as we go. Don't save them for the end, all right? Send them out there. We're also going to ask you a question every now and then, as well as we go along in some polling surveys. Now, this is what the day looks like. We're going to talk about the current end user computing market and what's going on out there. It's a pretty crazy space out there for sure over the last few years. We'll talk about that. All right. And then we're going to highlight, Workspot, the purpose-built platform that unifies enterprise browser, desktop as a service, VDI, and DEX, right? The end user experience. And then Jamie's going to really take us down and highlight the IGEL, the secure endpoint OS for now and next. And we hope you guys went to the event 3 or 4 weeks ago down in Miami. If you did, I'm sure you enjoyed it as much as us. And if you didn't, I think some of those recordings are online also. You should go and check them out on the website. Okay. All right. Hey, so remember, ask those questions as we go. And I'm going to start off by asking you guys a question. Here's the first one. How would you characterize your VDI environment? Now, this is a multiple choice, so you can pick all of these or just the ones that apply. All right, in your world going forward, are you doing app virtualization? Are you doing desktop virtualization with Windows or Linux? Are you doing enterprise browser? And even DEX is in there. DEX is when you're measuring and monitoring that end user experience with various tools that are out there to do that. They might be homegrown or you might have bought them. All right, so this is the deal. You guys go click on all of those, and then we get a better feel, for who's here and the things that are most interesting to you guys. So I'm seeing desktop virtualization across the board with Windows for sure, a little bit of Linux desktop VDI, and app virtualization, and even some enterprise browsers. So that's pretty cool. All right, hey, now let me ask you one more question here before we keep going, and that is this. If you have all that, enterprise browser, desktop with Linux and Windows, and then you've got AppVert, where are you running that? And by the way, not only where are you running that, but where do you want to run that? Is that in your corporate data center? Is it in a colo? Are you looking at putting it in Azure or GCP or AWS in any region around the world, or maybe even something other than that? Yeah, there you go. Somebody clicked on other. All right, good. So I am seeing a distribution of about 60% corporate and colo, and then a bunch of folks that are looking at Microsoft Azure, AWS, and then even some other that's out there also. So good for you guys. Thank you for sharing that information with us. That is very helpful. All right, so we'll use that in context and as we go forward. Now, we know the end user computing is a tough space out there. We're hearing from a lot of people coming forward to us that, Citrix is putting, a lot of pressure on you for pricing and commitments to 3 and 5 year contracts, as well as, Broadcom and vSphere as well. So those are challenging areas for you guys to be in. So you're looking for alternatives. Well, that's what we have for you today. We not only have alternatives for the notion of your VDI and bringing this into the cloud as DaaS, but you can actually do that. You can think about what are my data center costs and what are my costs in the cloud. We're going to give you some surprising information near the end on how much money you can save going forward. All right. Now, this is the stack you guys usually have to deal with. You got to put in on-prem in your data center. You got networking, storage, and servers, and you're building out all that physical CapEx. And then historically, you put vSphere as your hypervisor, and then even Citrix in there to manage all the VMs, whether they're app or desktop vert, and delivering those to users. You might even have a NetScaler to jam that in and get secure from the outside, control up maybe for end user experience monitoring, and then the endpoint. Are you using devices like IGEL OS? You're going to learn a lot about that today and see why that's attractive. Now look at the red and the yellow. These prices have gone through the roof. People come to us looking for an alternative, and it isn't the functionality they're disappointed in, it's the costs. And there's significant cost increases, they're very disappointed. I would imagine you guys are experiencing much of the same. And the trust to these vendors, well, it's not the same employees at those companies anymore. So you're kind of questioning the notion of how long do I do this? Do I do a multi-year commit with these folks, or do I look for an alternative? Alternative is the topic today. So if you look at that stack and you're looking for alternatives, oftentimes you're going to see the things on the right. Now, these are kind of point solutions for what you're looking for. So in the DaaS world, it could be Amazon Workspaces, it could be Windows 365 or AVD. You know, those are cloud-based alternatives, but it does lock you into a single vendor. You might look at maybe Island as an enterprise browser, so that you don't virtualize browsers anymore. You actually pull that off into a secure browser. Cut your costs there potentially quite a bit. Maybe you're looking at Nerdio combined with AVD to drop those costs and maybe a little bit of control up to do your enterprise and your end user experience monitoring and management there too. So this is just bringing a bunch of vendors in to solve these problems. But what you should know before we go forward is the capabilities that you find in those little blobs on the left are actually all found in Workspot, and we're going to show you that today. We do have VDI and we have DaaS in the cloud also, right? We optimize the cost for you, and you're really going to like what I show you in the cost savings department. And we also provide monitoring of the architecture that we provide to you. So that gives you a great look into, you know, DEX. It's as far as the VDI and the DaaS portion goes, not your entire network and so on, but just that part. The DEX is really good. You're going to see this also before the end of the presentation today. Now, historically, what you would find is, you know, people using laptops and connecting into VDI on-prem. Okay, can't really use a mobile device effectively, but if you have a laptop and you connect into VDI on-prem, you're going to hit your Windows apps and your Windows desktops, your Linux desktops, web applications, and you're hitting it all. But there's a huge CapEx expenditure there, and it's running at, you know, maximum, you know, sort of resolution and levels, and so you don't really use that all day. Your utilization is much lower during the afternoons and early mornings, and certainly on the weekends, and you're paying for so much that you're not using. So how do we modernize that? Well, what if we actually said, you're on your smartphone all the time. Why don't you use that with our enterprise browser and connect into mail? And you can use that anywhere and all the time. And guess what? There's no VDI or DaaS infrastructure cost there. So that's really a huge savings. And if you want to get back to your laptop and connect into multiple monitors and so forth to get more real estate, well, you can use the enterprise browser to hit your mail and Zoom and Teams and all those things, and even Salesforce, ServiceNow, OneDrive, all sorts of public and private web applications. And you're still not even using VDI or DaaS yet. There is no infrastructure cost when you do this. You're saving tons of money. Now, when you do need to connect into, say, DaaS, you have your laptop and your monitors, and you connect into the cloud to get a virtual application or a virtual desktop to do things like, you know, native Windows, PowerPoint, Word, Excel, or even 3D CAD accelerated applications. You can certainly do that through the cloud, and you're going to find out, if you do that occasionally throughout the day, that you can just pay for it while you're using it and not pay for it when you're not using it. Tremendous savings there. So you can see legacy, modern, changes the end user experience, changes the cost model, and also your support model too. Okay, now this breaks that down a little bit graphically in another way, which is on the left, you see your data center, which was built out to be optimally, you know, provisioned for high-end, top-end utilization. Well, it's not used all the time, and so you know it's really only 12 to 18% utilization on average. You know, maybe even weekends it's not used at all. So that's tough, and that's CapEx expenditure. If you come over to the right side here, you're going to see just in time and just enough, okay? So we're gonna actually provision Windows applications and Windows desktops in any cloud in any region around the world that you need, as close in proximity to the user as possible to give them a low latency, and you're only gonna pay for that when it's running, okay? These clouds now support suspend mode, which is like a hibernation mode on a laptop. It dumps the memory onto a drive, and it saves the state, and it shuts down all resources that you're paying for. So you're no longer paying for them. When the user needs that reactivated, it's like unhibernate or unsuspend. You know, boom, you're back, you're running in the same state you left it in, and off you go. All right, it's a brilliant thing. Our customers are using it now, and they couldn't be happier. And again, on the far right side, If you have browser-based experiences, either public or private, those are not using infrastructure at all anymore because we can deliver it to you in our enterprise secure browser. It gives them a very local experience. It's executing right in front of them on the CPU on the device they're actually running on. So they much prefer that. It's more secure and it's way more cost effective. Incredible. Customers love this also. So that user experience, sort of looks like this. You're sitting on a device, you're running Workspot Client, and you've got all these icons in here. And with these icons, that's it. So now you've got Windows apps, you've got public and private web applications, you got persistent and non-persistent Windows 10, 11 desktops, Linux desktops, server-based desktops, right? And it's all pulled together for you here. Click, launch, whatever it is that you need. You deploy these off to the users that need these types of applications. You manage the whole thing in one place in a cloud-based environment, and it's a beautiful thing. All right. Hey, now, before we go on to the next section, let me ask you one question that's vital, which is, what are your biggest issues with VDI and DaaS, okay? Now, listen, you can pick, say, 2 or 3 of these, okay? Because I know you want to click on them all, but which ones? It's like cost, complexity, security, observability, and user experience. Pick the top 3, okay? Because from that, we're going to figure out, what is more interesting to folks for sure. Now, I got to tell you, we've been asking this question for a couple of years. Years ago, it was always security. Security was the top one. I think nowadays people just know security has to be there. And what's interesting is there's a few other choices that are making the top of the list. And guess what? Just like I thought, top of the list is user experience today, 88%, right? And the next is cost and then complexity. And that is amazing because we got user experience and we got cost as the top choices that you guys shared today, okay? Well, you're gonna love that because that's exactly what we're gonna talk about next. User experience, cost, complexity, security, for sure. Now with that, we're gonna transition over and we are going to talk about the secure endpoint OS for now and next, and that is IGEL for sure. There is no other opportunity. So Jamie, take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. Yeah, I mean, that's what we do, right? Our focus is security. Our offering is an endpoint OS, and it's designed for today's problems and built for the future. Really, that's the key takeaway of what IGEL OS does. We've ground up, architected a very different way of looking at the endpoint, one that's going to be secure out of the box. Like you said, users take that security for granted. That was the biggest thing a few years ago. They just expect it to be secure now. That's what we're delivering. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide about what that really looks like. So we've introduced something we call the preventative security model. This is a very different way of looking at how things work. So we'll start with security because you expect that to be out of the box. And we're designing this operating system to replace the old monitor, detect, mitigate, remediate, right? The assumption before was the bad guys are going to get in. What do you do when it happens? What if we could keep that from happening? What if you didn't have to worry about that anymore? You could worry about those other functions that Workspot solves for you, right? The cost, the user experience, delivering those best of breed applications, desktop experiences, persistent, non-persistent, Windows 10, Windows 11, everything that your users need to accomplish their job function through Workspot. But IGEL OS blends into the background and takes care of those security issues as well as providing a very novel approach at the way we deal with an endpoint OS. And there's really 6 pillars to this, right? We have no local data. We don't store anything on IGEL OS. It's designed that way. So we're not worried about data leakage. We're not worried about theft of the device. And even if we had that, everything that's on the device is natively data encrypted. So we don't have to worry about security. That's just behind the scenes. There's nothing you need to do as an administrator, as an executive, to make sure that IGEL is locked down the way you want it to. It starts that way out of the box. And this all really started from a modular design. We decided to strip everything out to only the kernel modules that's needed to run the operating system along with the basic drivers. We don't even include things like a notepad or a browser out of the box, right? So if you're using IGEL OS with Workspot, you deploy one thing, Workspot, the Workspot app that's designed for IGEL and built in collaboration with Workspot. So you're not ending up with all kinds of attack surface that's been created when you don't need it. Really, it makes it simple to deploy and simple to manage. Now, the operating system itself is a read-only operating system. It doesn't have anything that can be changed on it other than through IGEL. If from the moment it boots through the moment the Workspot application loads, anything is off, it won't boot or it won't load, and it's stateless, so you can simply re-image it and start over, or in most cases, a reboot will put it back to where it belongs. And only the applications that we want to run through our trusted application platform work. And it integrates with any kind of MFA or SSO that you have. So we're eliminating your endpoint agents, right? Brad said cost was a big thing you were concerned about. We look at here at places where we saved in both CapEx and OpEx. We eliminated all those endpoint agents that you see here, antivirus, EDR, backup and recovery. None of that is needed anymore. Layer on IGEL, layer on the Workspot client, get exactly what you need. We're essentially immune to ransomware. IGEL OS has never been hacked. There's no way to install ransomware on it. You can't if you want to. It simply isn't designed to. And if you have to recover and get back to where you are, you can do so instantly. We support those zero trust network architectures and creating them. And we integrate again with all of the major identity access management, secure service edge that you may layer on top as well. And we say reduce attack surface by 95%, but realistically, the attack surface doesn't exist anymore. So let's go ahead and go to that next slide, Brad, and we'll talk a little bit more about what this is. We really want this to be easy, right? When you're talking about cost, how do you deploy this? How do you manage it? We can deploy IGEL OS locally. We can install it. It runs on any x86 64-based hardware. I have a fleet of HP laptops here dating back to circa 2012, 2014 that run it all the way up to the most modern hardware. We can install that locally. We can get it from vendors that actually pre-install and pre-license IGEL. We also can boot. So if you have a use case for, say, a call center, or you have a situation where users have a BYOD policy, they can boot to IGEL on a drive. It'll deploy the Workspot app exactly the way you need with all the configuration, all centrally from our UMS, which is our universal management suite that allows us to configure exactly what we want, what the user's experience looks like. You want to turn the machine into a kiosk that disappears completely and only allows you access to Workspot. All of that's done centrally. Managing 10 or 10,000 is just as simple. So a very simplified way of doing that, reducing your cost to deploy and manage IGEL. So let's take a look at that next slide, Brad. And what we're really trying to do here is get you to rethink that endpoint strategy. We're trying to reduce those high CapEx costs, like taking high performance machines that once you layer on all these agents run terribly. We're trying to extend that replacement cycle from the 3 to 5 year into the 7 or 10 years even to get you a much better way of doing that, eliminating those agents, both security and management. And then of course the OpEx costs, right? Testing, patching, managing, monitoring, remediating. A Windows desktop is not an easy thing to manage. It's not a cost-effective thing to manage. We want to get rid of that completely. And what we typically find here is about a 75 to, in some cases, 90% reduction on those by replacing this old broken security model. Let's take a look at how we actually do that. On the next slide, I'm going to go into a little bit of a demonstration about what that looks like. Now, I am terrible with making charts. This is not me. I didn't do this chart. This is something that we actually generate for our customers and with our partners like Workspot, where we can actually take exactly the amount of money that you're spending on various different things, CapEx and OpEx expenditures. We can put them into a system, integrating everything, your licensing costs, what kind of labor would be required if you were, say, migrating your Windows 10 infrastructure now. It's the perfect time to migrate to IGEL and then continue with your delivery of your applications and desktops through Workspot. We can avoid that labor cost. We can avoid those hardware upgrade costs. We can reduce things like removing agents for VPN, AV. We can reduce help desk calls by really turning the IGEL OS endpoint into a stateless device instead of the tremendous amount of cost you do managing a Windows endpoint. And then really improving that user productivity, like the end user experience and the user getting exactly what they need to perform their job function. That's what we're geared towards. We want our endpoint to disappear. We want the user to get exactly what they need through Workspot. And then of course, mitigating those risks, major security incidents, things that would typically cause havoc in your environment, taking those essentially to zero. And in this case, this was a 40,000 endpoint customer that over 3 years managed to save right around $41 million. So I've got a couple other examples I want to show you real quick, just so you can kind of get an idea of where this fits. This is an energy specific sector where we had 21,000 endpoints using IGEL OS, and we will generate this for you at no cost. So when you work with Workspot, when you work with your partners that are working with IGEL and Workspot, they can work on this for you, and it's going to be as accurate as the data that you give us. So we can put into this all kinds of things: software licensing cost, the cost that you might be paying for the Workspot platform itself, where Brad has a tremendous ability to do the same thing for you. I think he's going to show you that shortly. But we can put all of this information together to make that something that is easy for you to digest and integrate into your environment. We know now that no one's getting additional budget. So everything has to come from somewhere else. We find typically that in the savings on IGEL OS alone allows you to acquire your Workspot infrastructure that you would use, including training all of your users for less than you were spending before, just simply managing and maintaining Windows endpoints. So really good. Now, I know everyone doesn't have massive infrastructures. This is a big customer of ours, 21,000 endpoints. What if we were go smaller, right? This isn't something where we're just an enterprise play. SMB customers, small businesses, anyone leveraging IGEL to access their Workspot is going to be able to see a cost savings. So here we have a financial sector that has about 1,600 endpoints. And one of the things that's noteworthy here is in the risk mitigation and reduced cost. This was a customer that previously had an endpoint ransomware incident. So their cost, even though they were about 1/20th the size of the previous one, they still are going to see a very large reduced cost on the savings of the antivirus and the mitigation of the risks that they had. So again, this is something that's freely available to you. And the key takeaway here is that we want IGEL OS to complement what you're doing. And it's going to allow you to transition from other platforms as well. We support all kinds of different enterprise browsers and platforms. So if you're making a transition from, say, Citrix into a Workspot environment, you can start leveraging IGEL now to do that, and it will help you with a seamless transition from that Citrix environment over to Workspot. Your users won't see any interruptions or disruptions. It's all done centrally controlled and managed to maximize your return on investment and cost savings. So secure out of the box, the best user experience, the simplest integration with Workspot. It's really designed to be a better together story.
Yes, by the way, and coincidentally, it just sort of resonates with the results of the poll that we had earlier. What are the things that are most important to people? And certainly that's it. Obviously, security, cost and complexity, and also user experience. So here we're going to break that down too from a Workspot perspective, which is how do we focus on cost, right? Okay, and then end user experience. It just happens to be those are our columns here, right? But we want to make sure we have happy users and a happy CFO. So we want to reduce those costs as much as we can. We talked about that a bit before, how we do it with just in time and just enough provisioning in the cloud, any cloud in any region around the world. And also the fact we're monitoring everything associated with these transactions so we can make sure we know what's going on with the users and we can make them as happy as possible. Okay, so let's take a look at how we do that. Well, purpose-built AI-driven capability within Workspot, okay? We can take a look at exactly what usage forecast you're seeing. So it is the CapEx data center where everything is blown out at full capacity and you're just waiting for folks to come, and usually it's not being used, it's very underutilized. No, this is perfect provisioning where you launch something when they need it and you kill it, destroy it, and don't pay for it when they don't. So that's just in time, boom, when they need it, and just enough. Now, we want to make sure that they're not waiting a long time for that VM to fire up. So we do predictive launch ahead of time, okay? So if we know they're coming in, because this is the typical pattern, we're going to launch a few of these ahead of time and then warm them up and then spin them right up for them when they come. It's going to save them time. In 10 seconds, they'll be right back into their VM, which is great. As soon as they're done, boom, shut it off and save time. And you can see on the user side, user sentiment analysis. In Workspot Client, every once in a while when they close it down, a little window pops up and it says, hey, how's your experience? 1 to 5, 5 being good, 1 being not so good. And a little box to caption, they can put some notes in there too. That information is going right inside of our monitoring and management system so the IT folks can see it. Is there a problem somewhere? Is someone unhappy? Are they really happy? You can see it. And all the analytics and the telemetry is right there. So if there is an issue, we can do root cause analysis in seconds, okay? How are we doing that? Well, take a look at this bottom chart here, okay? Observability. On the far left-hand side is the Workspot Client. That communicates over the network, and certainly it's running on a device like the IGEL OS device, and that's communicating to, very securely, by the way, to the Workspot gateway, and that communicates back to the Workspot agent that's running on the VM. and that's whether it's apps or desktops. So now you can actually have every 30 seconds, you've got telemetry coming out of every node that you see down there on latency, connect times, traffic patterns, bandwidth, throughput, and so on. All that's going up into our huge data lake in the sky. And from that, customers can tap into that and see exactly what's going on, so they can make sure that they're literally only launching things when they need to be, and when they're supposed to be shut down, they're actually being shut down. Now, what we found was pretty surprising when we put all this in place is that you don't have to go into the cloud and say, hey, I want this VM for the month for my user. Well, that's kind of like CapEx on-prem, where you're actually provisioning for everything, and they may or may not be using it. We found now, because of the ability to suspend, which is like hibernate, that you can actually use hourly pricing. You can spin up a VM, they can use it for that hour, and if they're using it 2-3 hours a day, look at this. Non-persistent CPU on average is around 20 cents an hour. And check it out, non-persistent GPU accelerated might even be 75 cents an hour. We're finding our AEC customers, architectural engineering and construction, are loving this. They're launching these GPU accelerated workstations that have connectivity, super high speed connectivity to their big data sets. And they're crushing these things and doing this design work and then disconnecting, and they stop paying for it. They have never had a better financial model before and compared to this. And you can do this with non-persistent as well as persistent. You can see the bottom two rows down there are persistent. You'll see the only difference is that roughly $8 charge. So what is that? Well, you're using CPU and memory and networking and so forth and GPUs while you're actually crushing your data. But when you go into suspend or hibernation mode, it takes and dumps memory onto a hard drive, and everything else is saved state there. So you're paying $8 a month for saving state on a hard drive, and then the 30 to 75 cents an hour when you're actually using it. It's nuts. The amount of money that's being saved here is crazy, and it typically, more often than not, 99% of the time, it's better than any fixed rate you can get on a monthly bill, right? Now, with Workspot, we want to make sure you guys are super successful here, even if you don't have experience in the cloud. We just have tons of it because we've been doing it for 4, 5, 6 years in all clouds, in Azure, in GCP, in AWS, and we can point you to the right cloud and point you to the right region to get proximity to the users and low latent connections. And we have a bit of a white glove treatment where we work all this for you. You purchase the infrastructure through the cloud provider yourself, and we tie it all together and make sure it's working for you, it's provisioned correctly, your end users are happy, and we provide you the DEX tools and work with you on that to make sure that everything is humming along great. Now, this is a little glimpse into what that looks like, okay? We talked about just in time. Okay, so what does that mean? We want these VMs to run when you need them. Okay, so we have parameters you can click on. You talk about idle time. You can potentially say never sleep on these things, but you can set the priorities and the properties the way you like to make sure that the just-in-time provisioning is working the way you want. And real-time alarms. If a person has disconnected from their VM and it should shut down, API calls are fired to actually do that. Now, they don't always work. Sometimes an API, 99 times out of 100, it'll work. It won't sometimes. You don't want to find out at the end of the month that there's a VM that's running crazy out there and costing you a lot of money. So we'll fire an alarm on that. You'll see that, and you can manually destroy that VM and stop that billing, okay? We also take a look at capacity planning. So if you look at these curves here, this is what's built into the product. You can see the little blue curves, right? The blue curves are the consumption that's going on, and the red curves in this case are excess capacity that you didn't necessarily need. Well, you don't want a lot of excess. A little bit of excess is good to make sure those startup times are great. But you can keep an eye on it here, okay? And then when you take a look at the AI-driven element of this, it really comes into the forecasting. So look at this, you got blue, orange, and green. Blue is the active users and their consumption, or that's the predictive part of that, and the orange part is historically what was forecasted, and then the current forecast is going forward. So you can see the forecasting that's happening and then the execution across that. You know what's funny, if you look at the far left side and you see on that Thursday, it's like, wait a minute, blue means we had a bunch of resources ready for you, but orange means you didn't use them. That was Thanksgiving, right? So you know what? Sorry, the system didn't know there was a holiday that day. We need to add that into the system, right? But you can see predictively going along, expecting folks to work. It's getting just the right amount at just the right time to save you tons of money. And that creates this heat map that you see here. So the columns are 7 days of the week, and the rows are all the hours in the day. And as it gets more and more and more solid red, those are the days that the users are really in there cranking away, hundreds, if not thousands of users. This heat map gets created every single week. It gets further tuned. It uses predictive AI and machine learning to make sure we spin up these desktops when you use them and get rid of them when they don't. It's crazy. Based on all this work we've done and put into the system, you are saving so much money when you use these systems. You got to try it. Our current customers love it. And then you might say, well, what's the cost associated with the infrastructure itself? Well, we have calculators that'll help you figure that out, and you can see them right on our website. Now, the last thing I'll do is ask you guys a quick question, and thank you for joining us today, but you let us know how you want us to follow up with you. Did you want a follow-up meeting where we can talk specifics about your account and your requirements? Did you want to, are you interested in a pilot? Run this stuff, play with it yourself, get your hands on it. Do you want a copy of the webinar or some additional materials? So go ahead and click away on that and let us know. And if there are any more questions, now's the time, pop those questions in there, fire away. If we don't have time to answer them now as we're wrapping up right now, we will get back to you before the end of the day today. And so just let us know. And by the way, you can always get a hold of me at brad@workspot.com. That is for sure. So thanks for that. I'll close that poll. And Jamie, how would folks get a hold of you if they have a question?
Sure. My email is real easy. It's jamie.hallscott@igel.com. So just my first name dot last name at igel.com.
Excellent. And we got the spelling on the screen there today. So, hey, thank you, Jamie, for joining me today and providing that outstanding information. You guys should know it's all recorded. We'll put it online for you, and I'll share that link. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you for having me. It really is a better together story.
It totally is. Yes, exactly. And our customers are finding that already, our joint customers. And so thanks everyone online for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, and we will send you future invites to our future webinars as well. And we hope to see you again. Take care and have a fabulous day. Bye-bye for now.